Wang Lin immediately closed his eyes and sat in silence, meditating. 3 days later, the sky darkened, and snowflakes fluttered down, covering the entire mountain peak. From a distance, the peak appeared to be draped in silver, resembling a snow mountain. The snowflakes landed on Wang Lin's body, immediately melting within 3 feet of him, gradually forming a circular watermark around him. On his face, the marks of the T realm were no longer as pronounced as before. They had somewhat dissipated. Wang Lin opened his eyes, his gaze sharp and focused. Having dissipated a tenth of the T marks, the seal has loosened as well. My cultivation has returned to the early foundation establishment stage. With this, many of the magic treasures in my storage pouch can be used, albeit with difficulty. Adding to that, the mosquito beast, as long as I don't encounter a spirit transformation cultivator with a conceptual realm, I won't be in danger. However, the piece of immortal jade I consumed earlier is already the maximum my body can handle. If I continue to consume it, I fear the seal won't be undone in time, and I'll be turned to ashes by the immortal power before it even opens. For now, my only option is to push for core formation as quickly as possible. Once I reach that stage, I might be able to consume another piece of immortal jade and see if I can eliminate both the seal and the T realm in one go. But supreme spirit stones are limited. Continuing down this path is not a long-term solution. I need to find a place with abundant spiritual energy to focus on my cultivation. No matter what, within 9 years, I must restore my cultivation. Wang Lin thought for a moment, his eyes flashing, and he immediately flew up, landing on the mosquito beast. The mosquito beast immediately cheered and lifted Wang Lin into the air. Wang Lin glanced down at the fire cloud stronghold. After killing the burly man and the scarred face, much of his pent-up frustration was released. He patted the mosquito beast on the head, and it immediately moved forward, howling through the air. Slow down. Wang Lin's expression changed. His cultivation had only returned to the early foundation establishment stage, and he could not withstand the mosquito beast's full-speed flight, which was equivalent to a late nascent soul cultivator's. The mosquito beast immediately slowed down in response, flying at a more leisurely pace. Sitting on the mosquito beast's back, Wang Lin took out the mapped jade slip and examined it carefully. His gaze shifted southward, toward the location of the soul refining sect in the Pilu Kingdom. One of the 3 major sects of the Pilu Kingdom, the soul refining sect must have an abundance of spiritual energy. He chose the soul refining sect because, in the Pilu Kingdom, it was the only unusual sect. The sect had only a few hundred core disciples, but its outer disciples numbered in the tens of thousands. Compared to the other 2 sects in the Pilu Kingdom, the soul refining sect had the fewest core disciples. However, the 3 sects were balanced in strength, and with only a few hundred core disciples, the soul refining sect's ability to achieve this was largely due to the special nature of their cultivation methods and magic treasures, as well as the cultivation levels of the core disciples. The soul refining sect never actively took in children from the mortal world. To join the sect, one had to first become an outer disciple. Every 3 years, there was a grand competition for the outer disciples, where one would be selected to become a core disciple. Even among core disciples, there was an elimination system, meaning that even after entering, one could still be expelled. Becoming an outer disciple was simple. One only had to pay a certain number of spirit stones to acquire the status of an outer disciple for a limited time. Outside the soul refining sect's mountain gate, there were several large mountains. The spiritual energy in these mountains was several times denser than the outside world. This was where the outer disciples resided. Though they were called outer disciples, in reality, it was more like renting a cave mansion to cultivate by paying spirit stones. The soul refining sect's unique practice was rare on the Vermilion Bird Star, and very few people knew the true reason behind it. For this reason, Wang Lin had chosen the soul refining sect. The mapped jade slip, which detailed the sect's information, was likely sold to him by someone who had once been an outer disciple there, having spent some time in the sect. The Pilu Kingdom was a level 5 cultivation nation, with many cultivation families. These families relied on the 3 major sects, sending disciples to the sects every 10 or so years. The disciples of these cultivation families had no special privileges and were not of noble birth. Unless their talent was extraordinary, They had to start from the bottom. 7 days later, Wang Lin arrived at the Soul Refining Sect's mountain gate. When he was still 1,000 miles away, he put the mosquito beast away and took out an ordinary flying sword from his storage pouch. Under his control, it transformed into a streak of light, shooting toward the Soul Refining Sect. Not long after, the Soul Refining Sect came into view. However, when he was still dozens of miles away, a soft ripple expanded outward silently, preventing further entry. Wang Lin knew this must be the mountain protection array that the Soul Refining Sect constantly maintained. He quickly put away the flying sword and landed on the ground. Just then, a purple-red beam of light suddenly shot toward him from the horizon behind. The force created a deafening sound of breaking air, and a violent wind swept through, causing the surrounding trees and mountains to sway and rustle. As the red light approached, it transformed into an elderly man with red hair. This person had a peculiar face, with a very large mouth and nose, but his eyes were small, giving him a rather overwhelming presence. When Wang Lin saw the man, his eyes flickered, and he immediately stood respectfully to the side. The elder took a step forward and was about to enter the Soul Refining Sect, but suddenly turned his head, casting a glance at Wang Lin. He let out a soft and looked at the scar on his face, then shouted, "Which sect are you from?" Wang Lin quickly responded respectfully, "I am an independent cultivator, hoping to join the Soul Refining Sect as an outer disciple." The elder looked at Wang Lin, nodding slightly. For an independent cultivator to reach the foundation establishment stage is not an easy feat. You want to join the Soul Refining Sect as an outer disciple and find a place to seclude yourself, right? Wang Lin's eyes revealed awe, and he quickly said, "That is indeed my intention." The elder flicked his sleeve and said, "You are late. The deadline for accepting outer disciples has already passed. Go back and wait for a few more years before returning." With that, he was about to step inside. Wang Lin coldly snorted inwardly, though his face showed a pained expression. He took out a brocade box from his storage pouch and respectfully said, "Senior, this is a flying sword I obtained many years ago by chance. I have never used it, and I wish to offer it to you. I only ask to be accepted as an outer disciple." Wang Lin could immediately tell that the elder before him was only at the early core formation stage, and for someone with such cultivation, the flying sword he presented was already quite a precious item. The elder paused, looking at Wang Lin with a half-smile, thinking to himself that this independent cultivator was more clever than those disciples from cultivation families. With a wave of his right hand, the brocade box flew into his palm. He opened it, and his eyes immediately showed a hint of surprise. However, he quickly masked his surprise, and with an indifferent tone, he asked, "Where did you obtain this?" Wang Lin respectfully replied, "Many years ago, I helped a core formation cultivator by protecting him while he was injured. After he recovered, he gifted me this sword, but my cultivation is insufficient to use it." "Oh, what kind of injury did he sustain? Describe it to me," the elder said, his eyes flashing. With Wang Lin's 500 years of cultivation experience, he casually spoke, and his words sounded as if they were the truth. The elder listened for a while and no longer doubted him. After all, the person before him was merely a foundation establishment cultivator. How could he speak so convincingly if he hadn't witnessed it with his own eyes? Some details seemed close, but not quite right, which was natural. If he had been too detailed, that would have been suspicious. "All right, I'll make an exception this time since your cultivation is hard-earned. Come with me," the elder said, and with a motion of his body, he entered the Soul Refining Sect. At the same time, he took out a token from his robe and pressed it behind him, causing the barrier preventing Wang Lin from entering to dissipate instantly. Wang Lin quickly followed. "Follow me. The Soul Refining Sect has many restrictions. If you go the wrong way, don't expect me to help you," the elder said, and with a motion, he flew forward. Wang Lin tapped his storage pouch, and the flying sword appeared. He stepped onto the sword and followed the elder. After a while, the elder stopped at a mountain peak. There, a magnificent palace stood, surrounded by numerous buildings. The elder landed and shouted, "Changdawei." A lazy voice came from one of the buildings, coming, red-haired. "Why are you shouting?" A middle-aged man walked out, his hair messy as if he hadn't groomed himself in years. The red-haired elder laughed heartily and said, "This is a disciple I met on the way. Could you accept him as an outer disciple?" The middle-aged man yawned, glanced at Wang Lin lazily, and said, "Since you, red-haired, have spoken, how could I refuse?" The red-haired elder smiled and said, "Then it's settled. I gathered over 100 vengeful souls on my journey, and I'll be refining a main soul for my soul banner. Once it's done, I'll come to you for a drink." With that, the elder moved and flew off into the distance. "You, what's your name?" the middle-aged man asked, looking at Wang Lin. "Disciple Qing Mu," Wang Lin respectfully answered. "This is Mountain Cave 1090. It's yours to use for a year with a mid-grade spirit stone," the man said, waving his hand. A black token flew to Wang Lin. Wang Lin showed a pained expression, gritted his teeth, and handed over 2 mid-grade spirit stones. The middle-aged man took them without a word and turned to walk back into his room. Just as Wang Lin was about to leave, the man suddenly spoke again. "What did you give the red-haired elder?" "A flying sword that was given to me by a senior many years ago," Wang Lin answered truthfully. "No wonder the red-haired one is so eager. Qing Mu, you have Foundation Establishment Cultivation, but don't get cocky. Though there aren't many Foundation Establishment cultivators among the outer disciples, there are still quite a few. Tomorrow, in June, will be the Soul Refining Sect's grand competition. Train hard. If you have the ability, you might even get into the inner sect and become a core disciple." The man shook his head and walked into his room. At this very moment, Lume stood on a cliff 50 miles outside the Soul Refining Sect, gazing towards the sect. In her hand was a jade slip, which had been delivered a month ago by Vermilion Bird Patriarch through someone. Although this jade slip couldn't pinpoint Xun'er's exact location, it would react if he was within 100 miles. At that moment, the jade slip glowed with a faint blue radiance. "Is he in the Soul Refining Sect?" Lume murmured softly. He was in an extremely disheveled state. There were 3 fist imprints above his soul, from which bursts of crystalline light spilled out, radiating into the world. The elderly man was the patriarch of the giant demon clan. He had been wounded by Sun Tai's demon child on that fateful day, and had no choice but to let his soul escape with the storage pouch, fleeing for his life. He didn't even have time to catch Wang Lin. However, the demon child was strange. Silent and relentless, it had pursued him tirelessly for months, nearly circling the entire Vermilion Bird Star. The patriarch of the giant demon clan had even been struck by several punches from the demon child. These small fist imprints were actually directly damaging his soul. Had it not been for his extensive cultivation years and some secret techniques from the giant demon clan, he might have perished. As for using his innate divine ability again, he was powerless. Ultimately, he lured the demon child to the northern flaming extremity, using the natural restrictions left behind when Vermilion Birdstar was born, finally managing to shake off the pursuit. Now, in a weakened state, he dared not make his presence known. He quickly returned to the giant demon clan, putting aside the fate of Chi Hu and another clan member. Upon reaching the giant demon clan, he immediately took over the body of one of his clan members and began his seclusion. As for Wang Lin, he dared not seek him out now. The Vermilion Bird Nation had already begun investigating the matter, and reluctantly, he gritted his teeth and gave up. Though Wang Lin had not caught him, he had obtained a peculiar flying sword. At this moment, while in seclusion, the patriarch of the giant demon clan opened his eyes, moving his newly taken body, and a hint of darkness appeared in his gaze. The body he had taken required time to fully merge and become his true flesh. This time could vary, depending on the person and their cultivation level. The patriarch's eyes flickered, and he tapped his storage pouch. Instantly, the immortal sword flew out and hovered in front of him. He pointed at the sword with his right hand, and immediately, a scream rang out from it, accompanied by pleas for mercy. "Sword spirit, appear," the patriarch called softly. At once, a cloud of black mist emerged from the sword, transforming into Su Ligua. Upon seeing the patriarch, he immediately shouted loudly for mercy. "Master, spare me. I was also forced by that Wang. My hatred for him is no less than yours. I loathe him to the core." The patriarch of the giant demon clan paused, and then laughed. "Your sword spirit is amusing. Other sword spirits are all steadfast, loyal without question. Su Ligua immediately showed a flattering expression and said, "Master Su." The Patriarch's eyes widened. Su Ligua immediately slapped himself across the face, quickly saying cautiously, "They can't compare to me. I'm someone who knows when to adapt." The Patriarch of the giant demon clan gave Su Ligua a glance, then pointed again with his right hand. Instantly, a blue light flashed, imprinting itself on Su Ligua. Su Ligua cried out in agony, continuously begging for mercy, and loudly spoke ill of Wang Lin. The Patriarch snorted coldly, retracting his seal, and said, "From now on, you are my sword spirit. Since you have voluntarily surrendered, I will not seal you. Besides, in my hands, you won't be able to escape." In fact, the blue light he had just used was a type of seal, but on Su Ligua, it only caused pain without showing any signs of being sealed. The elder was quite intrigued but remained indifferent, planning to study the fusion of his body more carefully after it was complete. Su Ligua immediately showed a grateful expression, patting his chest with his right hand and fawningly saying, "Rest assured, Master. I, Su Ligua, am always loyal and steadfast. Wang Lin treated me poorly, so I rebelled against him. But you, Master, treat me well. I will never betray you. If I do, may I be pierced by 10,000 demons." Seeing the giant demon clan patriarch's expression soften, Su Ligua breathed a sigh of relief and inwardly thought, "As expected, Master Su is wise. Humph, that calamity star doesn't know when he'll come to rescue me, so I can't act tough. I must soften my stance for now, and later I'll settle the score with this old immortal. I, Su Ligua, have always been loyal, and that calamity star has treated me well for so many years. How could I betray him?" The Patriarch of the giant demon clan's gaze flickered. He had initially planned to destroy the sword spirit and replace it with another, but if it wasn't the original sword spirit, he knew it wouldn't function properly. Moreover, this sword spirit was unusual. It had developed intelligence, capable of begging for mercy and making judgments. Such a sword spirit could be immensely useful in battle. What he didn't know was that Su Ligua wasn't the original sword spirit. The reason it had developed intelligence was because Su Ligua himself was a demon. Even the so-called oath to be pierced by 10,000 demons wasn't a punishment for him. Instead, he vaguely anticipated the pleasure of a great boost. The elder of the giant demon clan pondered for a moment, then grabbed Su Ligua and pressed him back into the flying sword. He examined the sword carefully, growing more and more astonished with each glance. "This sword is certainly no ordinary object, but I can't tell what material it was forged from." His eyes flickered, and he carefully placed the sword into his storage pouch. Meanwhile, Wang Lin, holding the soul refining Sect token, flew up the mountain peak and found Cave Mansion 1090. He entered with a swift motion. The cave was rather small, similar in size to the one he had in the back mountains of the Xun'er sect. Inside, there was only a stone bed, with no table in sight. However, the spiritual energy here was abundant, far stronger than the outside world, even more concentrated than the water pool in Firecloud Stronghold that had 3 nearly depleted Supreme Spirit Stones. After all, although the spiritual energy from Supreme Spirit Stones was easy to absorb, it lacked vitality, especially as they neared depletion. It could not compare to the large spiritual energy accumulation from countless spiritual stones in the vast spiritual mountain veins. Wang Lin sat cross-legged on the stone bed, beginning his breathing exercises. 3 days later, Wang Lin opened his eyes and shook his head slightly. He felt the progress was still too slow. After thinking for a moment, he slapped his storage pouch and pulled out 3 Supreme Spirit Stones, placing them around him. With a casual gesture, he performed a series of seals, which struck the surrounding walls and the cave entrance. He closed his eyes once more, resuming his breathing exercises. Immediately, the spiritual energy inside Cave Mansion 1090 grew denser. Upon touching the walls, the seals on the walls flashed with purple light, deflecting the energy and preventing it from dissipating. The cave had become like a steaming pot, where the spiritual energy could not escape, and it kept accumulating. As a result, Wang Lin's breathing became the only way for the energy to flow out. In each breath, the immense spiritual energy surged toward him like a tidal wave. Wang Lin's complexion became slightly flushed as he calmly absorbed the energy. The spiritual energy within him grew steadily, but it was still far from enough to break through the traces and seals of the T intent. These seals and intentions actively consumed spiritual energy, becoming stronger as his cultivation progressed. As time passed, Wang Lin had been an outer sect disciple of the soul-refining sect for a month now. One day, Wang Lin opened his eyes, his gaze brighter than before. He had desperately absorbed spiritual energy throughout the month. 2 of the 3 supreme spirit stones were now depleted, and the last one was on the brink of exhaustion. Despite the massive effort, the results were significant. His cultivation had progressed from early foundation establishment to the peak of mid-foundation establishment, just one step away from late foundation establishment. It's still too slow. I had to burn through supreme spirit stones just to barely reach this point. But there are less than 15 left in my storage pouch. At this rate, it won't be enough. Wang Lin sighed lightly, stretching his body. Suddenly, the stone bed beneath him cracked with several loud snaps. Even the surrounding walls began to crumble, revealing numerous fine cracks. Wang Lin was stunned for a moment. Then after a brief pause, he understood the cause. The spiritual energy in the cave had become too concentrated over the past month, causing the walls and bed to crack under the sudden surge of energy. If this continued, the cracks would only get worse. This cave is no longer usable. I need to find another one. Wang Lin's eyes flashed. With a swift motion of his hands, he pressed down on both sides. The cracks on the walls and bed began to shift and slowly smooth out. Even the stone bed returned to its original form with just a touch. However, Wang Lin knew this was only a temporary fix. If the spiritual energy became too dense again, the cracks would reappear. But as long as he didn't use the supreme spirit stones, the cracks should not form, and no one would be suspicious. After thinking for a moment, Wang Lin stood up, opened the cave door, and walked outside. It was dusk. The setting sun in the distance cast a red glow across the sky. Today was the last day of the old year, and Wang Lin gazed at the sunset. The winter sun was not warm, and the light that fell on him had already turned into frost. He paused for a moment, then remembered that today marked the end of the year. Tomorrow would be the beginning of a new one. He wondered what Zhou was doing now. Was she still bullying Little White? A faint smile appeared on Wang Lin's face as he watched the sunset, taking a deep breath. Surviving after the calamity. Wang Lin murmured. He had been struck down from a position of greatness, but with his determination, he had managed to endure it all. Today, he finally had time to reflect and speak these words. His heart grew complicated as he thought back to all that had happened after he lost his spiritual power. Today marked the last day of the old year, symbolizing Wang Lin's current solitude. But tomorrow was the first day of the new year, a symbol of new beginnings and endless possibilities. It's over, Wang Lin whispered softly. At this moment, within the setting sun, a graceful figure of a woman slowly flew towards him from a distance. This person seems familiar. Wang Lin's gaze sharpened. She seems familiar. Wang Lin glanced at the figure, pondering for a moment, but could not recall where he had seen her before. His body moved, and he floated down from the mountain peak, quickly reaching the mountain's edge. The middle-aged man, sitting on the ground and meditating, opened his eyes when Wang Lin descended. He casually scanned the surroundings, but when his gaze landed on Wang Lin, his eyes immediately sharpened, and he stared at him in surprise. You've reached the mid-foundation establishment stage. A look of astonishment appeared on his face. Wang Lin sighed inwardly. After the collapse of his essence spirit, he could no longer hide his cultivation level, which allowed this core formation cultivator to spot the flaw. I must restore my essence spirit as soon as possible, or it will be a problem in the future, Wang Lin thought to himself, but he showed a respectful expression and said, I was about to break through earlier, and after meditating here and absorbing the surrounding spiritual energy, I luckily succeeded and reached the mid-foundation establishment stage. The middle-aged man showed no visible reaction, but he was deep in thought. Wang Lin's words seemed plausible enough, though the speed of his cultivation was unusually fast. He stared at Wang Lin for a long while, memorizing his features, before speaking, What brings you here? Wang Lin cupped his hands in greeting and said, I would like to exchange for a cave mansion with more abundant spiritual energy. The middle-aged man frowned and replied, "Cultivators should avoid being too impatient. If you continue cultivating at such a fast pace, your foundation will be unstable, and you'll never reach the core formation stage in this life." Wang Lin remained silent for a moment before responding. "I am aware of my situation, and I hope Senior will agree." The middle-aged man glanced at him again and said, "Since you insist, I will not stop you. However, to change rooms, you will need to add 1 mid-grade spirit stone." Wang Lin forced a bitter smile, showing a pained expression as he took out a mid-grade spirit stone and handed it over. The middle-aged man accepted the stone and said, "Give me your token." Wang Lin handed over his token, and the middle-aged man took it, then retrieved another token from his storage pouch. The smaller the room number, the more spiritual energy it contains, he explained as he tossed the token to Wang Lin. Wang Lin caught the token and saw that it was labeled 803. He quickly thanked the man and turned to leave. After he departed, the middle-aged man's gaze flickered. "Strange," he muttered to himself. His body moved, transforming into a streak of light as he headed straight for the 1090th cave mansion. In the blink of an eye, he arrived outside the cave mansion and stepped inside. He carefully examined it for a long time, but found no clues. He began to feel puzzled. Could it be that I'm being overly suspicious? Perhaps he really did just break through, and that's why his cultivation speed is so fast. The middle-aged man pondered for a moment before stepping out of the cave mansion, making up his mind to observe this person named Qing Mu more closely in the future. Wang Lin, holding the token, flew up the mountain, eventually arriving at Cave Mansion 803. This mansion, like 1090, was nothing special in size, except that there was a small formation set up on the ground. The formation was quite complex, and at first glance, it seemed to have many overlapping layers. Once inside the cave mansion, Wang Lin's gaze immediately focused on the formation. After studying it for a while, his eyes flashed. This formation was a simple spirit gathering array. There were many unnecessary components on it, clearly designed to prevent others from seeing through it. The primary function of a spirit gathering array was to gather the surrounding spiritual energy, greatly increasing the spiritual energy within a certain range. However, the array had to be placed over a spirit vein node to be effective. Otherwise, its effect would be minimal. A spirit vein node was a special location within a spirit vein, similar to acupoints in the human body, where one small movement could affect the entire system. This place can't be a spirit vein node. It must be a pseudo-spirit vein node that was relocated. Wang Lin observed carefully and came to this conclusion. Although his cultivation was temporarily suppressed due to the injuries to his intent and seals, as a spirit transformation cultivator, Wang Lin's sharp eyesight remained. He could immediately discern the details of the formation. Even core formation cultivators rarely noticed such details in this formation. Only nascent soul cultivators would be able to spot some traces, but seeing through it would still be difficult, especially since this formation had many extra components that served to confuse observers, which significantly increased the difficulty of analysis. After all, the soul refining sect could turn an entire mountain peak into a cave mansion for outer sect disciples, and they would certainly make adjustments to prevent others from easily deciphering their formations. However, even the founder of the soul refining sect might never have imagined that a spirit transformation cultivator was practicing within an outer sect disciple's cave mansion. Wang Lin's eyes flashed, and with a movement of his right hand, he manipulated the formation. Immediately, he saw a more complex formation within the core of the array. This formation within the formation must be responsible for moving the spirit vein node and creating the pseudo-spirit vein node, Wang Lin thought, observing for a while longer. He paused for a moment in thought, then restored the formation to its original state, sat cross-legged to the side, and began forming hand seals. After casting a series of restriction seals onto the surrounding cave walls, he took out 3 supreme spirit stones and resumed his breathing cultivation. The spiritual energy here was several times denser than in Cave Mansion 1090. After all, this place was supported by a spirit gathering array. Through the connection of a pseudo-spirit vein node, a branch had been diverted directly from the spirit vein into this cave, making the spiritual energy here naturally abundant. With the aid of 3 supreme spirit stones, The concentration of energy had reached an astonishing level. Even a nascent soul cultivator would be tempted to seize this place at all costs upon seeing it. Cultivating here would drastically improve their speed. Wang Lin became fully immersed in his cultivation, losing all sense of time. A thick layer of spirit frost had formed around his body. When spiritual energy reaches a certain concentration without dispersing or flowing, it condenses into pale blue spirit frost. At this moment, the ground of Cave Mansion 803 shimmered with a faint blue glow, strikingly beautiful. The spirit frost around Wang Lin was even thicker, covering his entire body. From a distance, he appeared to be cloaked in blue radiance. However, the tea-leaf-shaped scars on his face still marred his appearance, making him look fierce and intimidating. Within him, spiritual energy steadily accumulated and condensed. At the same time, the tea intent and the seals strengthened under the influence of the rich spiritual energy, becoming several times more solid than before. Time slipped by unnoticed. Wang Lin had been in seclusion for 2 months now. During this time, he hadn't moved an inch, seizing every moment to raise his cultivation. But as his cultivation advanced, the required amount of spiritual energy increased, and his progress slowed. In 2 months, he had only reached the late foundation establishment stage, still some distance from the perfect foundation establishment stage. The 3 supreme spirit stones had also been depleted one after another, much to Wang Lin's regret. He resolved to minimize the use of such stones in the future, as relying on them for cultivation wasn't sustainable. One day, Wang Lin opened his eyes and fixed his gaze on the formation carved into the floor. After a moment's contemplation, he struck it with his right hand. Instantly, the formation unraveled, revealing the formation core beneath. The spiritual energy here still isn't enough. If I could directly draw energy from this pseudo-spirit vein node, it should be sufficient to reach the core formation stage. His eyes sparkled as he stared intently at the small formation within the core, beginning a meticulous study. A formation was essentially a form of restriction seal, and Wang Lin had already reached mastery in their design. Now, focusing fully on this one, insights gradually surfaced. He formed hand seals, drawing on the spiritual energy within him. His hands moved swiftly, conjuring seals one after another. Soon, beads of sweat formed on his forehead as the pace of his hands quickened, eventually becoming a blur. Almost as soon as one seal was formed, another would follow. In a short time, countless shadows overlapped. These were shadow restrictions. Sweat soaked through Wang Lin's robes. This shadow restriction was a unique technique he had created himself. Unlike ordinary singular seals, it required great control. With his current level, he could easily cast basic seals, but shadow restrictions were far more demanding. Back in the ancient god ruins, even with core formation stage cultivation, he could only cast a few shadow restrictions. It was no easier now. At full effort, even forming one was a struggle. His hands became a blur until all the shadows suddenly merged into one. With a low shout, Wang Lin pointed at the formation. In an instant, the shadow restriction descended. The small formation trembled violently, and a massive force surged outward from it. Wang Lin moved quickly to dodge the shockwave. His eyes locked onto the formation the entire time. As the force subsided, the formation ceased operating. No spiritual energy leaked out anymore. Stepping forward, Wang Lin tapped the formation with his finger. Cracking sounds echoed as the formation flickered, then slowly faded away, revealing a fist-sized spirit stone within. The stone was red, and inside it swirled a cloudy mist. Wang Lin immediately recognized it. It was Xun'er crystal rock, a natural conductor of spiritual energy, though unable to store it. Without hesitation, Wang Lin pressed his right hand onto the red stone and began absorbing its energy. Boom! A surge of powerful spiritual energy burst out of the Xun'er crystal rock at an unimaginable speed, coursing through Wang Lin's arm and flooding into his body. Under the intense impact, every hair on his body stood on end. A wave of black mist was forcibly expelled through his pores. The T-shaped scars on his face immediately dulled. Though they didn't vanish entirely, they had clearly weakened. Wang Lin was overjoyed. He never expected that absorbing the energy from the pseudo-spirit vein directly would have such an effect. However, this effect could only be achieved the first time, with the intense impact being effective only then. Afterward, it would become ineffective unless he could find a more powerful spirit vein. Wang Lin took a deep breath, cleared his mind of all distractions, and began to absorb the spiritual energy with full focus. Gradually, the energy surging from the Kuan crystal stone became steadier, no longer as wild and violent as before. Wang Lin slowly immersed himself in his cultivation. Within each of the 5 ice blocks, there was a thumb-sized piece of immortal jade. Through the array within the ice, it underwent some mysterious transformation. At this moment, Li Yuanfeng, though not looking disheveled, had a languid expression. His face was pale, devoid of color. After a long while, he opened his eyes, a trace of lingering fear in his gaze. What a powerful lightning strike! It contained immortal power. With my cultivation, I managed to escape and weaken its power. After reducing it by half, it still caused injuries when it struck me. Li Yuanfeng had initially planned to kill Wang Lin while Sun Tai and the giant demon clan's ancestor fought. Unfortunately, he was pursued by Sun Tai's immortal thunder and, after much effort, barely escaped. After all, he had only forcibly advanced to the early infant metamorphosis stage with the help of the Vermilion Bird Nation's secret techniques, and there would be no further breakthroughs in this life. Compared to those who broke through the infant metamorphosis stage with their own cultivation, he was still too weak. Li Yuanfeng, stronger than the perfect late spirit transformation stage, but weaker than those in the infant metamorphosis stage, found himself stuck in such a middle ground, unable to resist Sun Tai's immortal thunder. As for Xun'er, I wonder if he's dead. But even if he's not, my tea concept won't be so easily cracked. Li Yuanfeng sneered, his gaze flickering. Red Butterfly, that brat, declared 100 years of closed-door cultivation. When she comes out, she'll be an infant metamorphosis cultivator. But by then, my lifespan will be over, so it doesn't matter. However, why does the giant demon clan's ancestor insist on having Xun'er's corpse? That's suspicious. Could there be something I don't know? Li Yuanfeng pondered for a while, but couldn't figure it out. Within the Pilu Kingdom, outside the soul-refining Sect's mountain gate, among several peaks for outer Sect disciples to cultivate, Wang Lin woke from his meditative state. Perfect late foundation establishment stage. Wang Lin's eyes shone with bright light. He took a deep breath, his body trembling slightly. The spirit frost on his body seemed to melt away, flowing immediately into his body, disappearing without a trace. Even the spirit frost on the ground and walls of the cave mansion melted away, transforming into faint blue energy that Wang Lin absorbed. At this moment, Wang Lin's T mark on his face faded a bit more, though it still looked twisted and ominous. The pseudo-spirit vein energy from the branch veins isn't sufficient. I need to find a place with stronger spiritual energy. Surely, the true spirit vein should meet the requirements, Wang Lin thought, his gaze flashing. He fiddled with the array on the ground, restoring it and concealing the spirit vein before rising and leaving the cave mansion. Outside the cave mansion, the sun was bright, and the earth had a touch of spring. The peaks were adorned with delicate greenery, exuding a unique charm. The mountain breeze blew gently. Although still cold, it was no longer as harsh as before. There was a trace of warmth in the chill. Taking a deep breath, Wang Lin was about to step forward and leave. At that moment, his expression shifted slightly, and he turned to look to the side. The peak where Wang Lin resided was divided into countless cave mansions for cultivation. During these days, he had been in seclusion, encountering no one except for a middle-aged man. At this moment, a figure walked out from a cave mansion about 10 zhang away. This person wore a light blue gauze robe, with white chiffon draped over her shoulders. The breeze made the fabric flutter, giving her an ethereal, otherworldly appearance. Her black hair cascaded over her shoulders, moving with the wind. Her beauty was gentle yet unadorned, exuding an elegant, transcendent aura. She seemed to sense someone nearby, turning her head slightly. Her eyes held an indescribable charm. When she saw Wang Lin, she smiled softly, acknowledging him, before looking into the distance. Wang Lin withdrew his gaze. He immediately recognized this woman as the person he had seen before during sunset, right before his seclusion. This woman seems familiar. But I can be certain I've never met her before. Wang Lin furrowed his brow. Years ago, Lu Mei of the Xiandao sect was a fragment of the Thousand Illusions art, naturally different from her main body. After 500 years of change, Lu Mei's appearance had altered, and she no longer resembled the woman Wang Lin had seen before. Wang Lin pondered for a moment, but didn't pay further attention to the woman. Though her beauty was unparalleled, surpassing even Red Butterfly, and far more striking than Li Muan, she was still not someone who caught Wang Lin's interest. With a movement, Wang Lin leaped from the peak, his gaze landing on a cave mansion below. His eyes fixed on the number 743 written on it. It should be here. Wang Lin descended, glancing at the cave mansion. Back when he was cultivating through breathing techniques, he had discovered the location of the true spirit vein node based on the offshoots from the spirit vein and the pseudo-spirit node it had formed. Now, with a glance, he immediately judged that Cave Mansion 743 was the closest location to the spirit vein node. There's someone inside. Seeing the heavenly chasm stone drop outside the cave mansion, Wang Lin paused thoughtfully, his mind already made up. Just as he was about to return to his cave mansion, a middle-aged man stepped out from a dwelling halfway up the mountain. His gaze flickered as it landed on Wang Lin. In truth, the moment Wang Lin had appeared, the man had already taken note of him from within the room. "Qingmu, come here." The middle-aged man's expression was unreadable, his voice low and stern. A subtle flash of killing intent crossed Wang Lin's eyes. With a flicker of movement, he landed 10 zhang away from the man. Perfect foundation establishment stage. The man's pupils contracted as his heart raced. Instinctively, he felt that something was off about Qingmu. Just a few months ago, this man had only been in the early foundation establishment stage. Then, he had progressed to the mid-stage. And now, unbelievably, he had reached the perfect foundation establishment stage. The middle-aged man licked his lips, his heart thudding wildly. He couldn't help but think, if he sees this person again in a few months, he might be in the same realm as himself, the early core formation stage. If Qingmu doesn't possess some heaven-defying artifact, then the cultivation technique he's using must be incredibly profound, the man thought to himself. He took a deep breath, fixed his gaze on Wang Lin, and smiled faintly. "Qingmu, the next time we meet, I might have to call you Taoist friend." Wang Lin glanced at the man and said coolly, "You flatter me." A glimmer of hostility flickered through the man's eyes, but was quickly concealed. He chuckled and said, "Qingmu, if you can reach core formation here, your chances in the grand competition a few months from now will increase significantly. If you become an inner sect disciple by then, you must come back often." Wang Lin smiled slightly. "Of course, but the spiritual energy in my current cave mansion is still lacking. I wonder if I can switch to another one." The man hesitated slightly. Cave mansions numbered below 700 require elder approval. But if you're truly set on changing, I can make an exception and help you apply. Wang Lin shook his head. "No need to trouble you. I only want Cave Mansion 743. The man's eyes narrowed as he glanced at Cave Mansion 743, then let out a hearty laugh. "That's easy enough. But Qingmu, while that Cave Mansion's spiritual energy is decent, it's far from the best." "No problem," Wang Lin replied with a smile. With a flip of his hand, he took out 2 mid-grade spirit stones. "I've troubled you many times, senior. This extra stone is a small token of appreciation." The man took the stones, sneering inwardly. "Now's not the time. But tonight, no matter how many spirit stones you offer, I'll find out the secret behind your rapid cultivation." Though this was his inner thought, outwardly, he laughed heartily. Taking a jade slip from his storage pouch, he lightly tapped it. A streak of spiritual light shot out. With a single gesture, the man directed the light, which instantly flew toward Cave Mansion 743. A moment later, someone flew out from the mansion. Dressed in black, his face was brutish and fleshy. He looked more like a butcher than a cultivator. He landed several zhang away from the man, eyes bulging as he clasped his fists and barked, "Senior, what do you want? Bring me your token. I'm assigning you a different cave mansion," the man replied. "Switch cave mansions? No way. I've been cultivating just fine there. Why should I move?" The man snorted and turned to Wang Lin with a sneer. "So it's you, kid? Fork over 100 mid-grade spirit stones, or forget it." With that, he didn't spare another glance at the middle-aged man. He turned and strode back into Cave Mansion 743. Humph. The man gave the retreating figure a cold look, already deciding that once Qing Mu's matter was handled, this brute would pay. Qing Mu, you head back first. I'll arrange a different one for you tomorrow. His tone left no room for argument. With a flick of his sleeve, he turned and re-entered his residence. Wang Lin's expression remained unchanged as he flew off toward his cave mansion. Inwardly, he sneered. If that middle-aged man leaves me alone, then perhaps his fate isn't sealed. But if greed stirs in his heart, and he comes tonight, then I may have no choice but to kill.